Hi everyone! In this tutorial I'm going to teach you how to make this easy Tunisian crochet baby blanket using our Tunisian crochet simple stitch. It doesn't have to be a baby blanket, it can be any kind of blanket. It just depends on the size of the yarn and the hook and things like that. It can be a very large blanket for an adult or a small one for a baby. It's up to you. This one is a baby blanket. So let's get started. Alright, let's go over our materials. For this tutorial, you will need a Tunisian crochet hook. So this is the one that I'm using. It's a 6.5mm crochet hook, but depending on the kind of yarn you use, you'll need either a bigger hook or a smaller hook. So make sure you consult your yarn label to figure out exactly what size hook you need to use. Now, a Tunisian crochet hook, there are a couple different types. This type has a cord that you screw onto it with a stopper at the end. Some Tunisian crochet hooks are just a very long hook, like a knitting needle with a stopper at the end. This one has a cord. And the benefit of the one with the cord is that I can actually unscrew this hook and use it as a regular crochet hook. So I can unscrew it, or I can take a different size hook from the same set and screw that in place and have a different size hook that just attaches to the cord. So that's the benefit of this. For this tutorial, I'm using Mira handcraft yarns. This is just a small sample size pack. I got a large pack of just a bunch of different colors of this yarn for Christmas, so I thought this would be a good time to use this. And I'm going to show you how to make a small version of this blanket, and depending on the size of the blanket you want to make, you can make it with more stitches or less stitches. It's really up to you. But I'm using this yarn for our sample. And then once again, depending on the kind of blanket you are making, you can use more than one color, you can use only one color. It's really up to you what you want to do. In this case, I'm going to be using pink for my main color and then blue for the border. For those of you who are new to Tunisian crochet, please go check out my Tunisian crochet basics and my Tunisian crochet simple stitch tutorial. Those two videos provide the basic information you need to complete this tutorial. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is make a slip knot. So we can wrap the yarn around our finger and pull up a loop through the middle just like that, and put the loop on our hook. Now, depending on the blanket that you're making, you may want more or less chains. For this tutorial, since I'm only showing you how to make a small swatch, it's going to be really up to you how many chains you want. The number of chains really doesn't change the nature of this tutorial though. And for those of you who want to know how many chains were used in this baby blanket, I used 100 chains. So this baby blanket is 100 chains across. So if you want to make a blanket like that, this is 100 chains across, and I used, for this blanket, a 6mm crochet hook, and I also used baby weight yarn, which is a light weight yarn, but I used 2 strands of it, so I doubled up my baby weight yarn, which essentially equates to a medium weight yarn. So this is 100 stitches, medium weight, all the way across. Depending on the kind of blanket you want to make, the number of chains you need will change. So what you can do is just chain until you like how long it is. That's pretty much how it is. The number of chains you get is pretty much how long it's going to be, or how wide it's going to be. Same thing with the number of rows. So the number of rows for this is also going to be very free. It really just depends on, how long you want your blanket to be. So for the sake of teaching you quickly, for this example, I'm going to chain 20. 1, 2, 3, 18, 19, and 20. And your foundation chains should be fairly loose. So they're not super tight, and the reason why is because you want to be able to work into the back bump of the chain. Okay, so now we have our 20 chains. What we need to do is flip it over to the back side. And on the back side, you'll notice that there are actually bumps in the chain. And we're going to be working into those bumps. So for our forward pass, you need to pull up a loop through every bump. So find your first bump. And it may be a little difficult to find the first one. There we go. So that's one. and then go into the next bump and pull up another loop. All right, so just carry on pulling through a loop in every bump for the rest of your chains. And when you're done, you should have the same number of loops on your hook as you had chains in the beginning. So if you started with 100 chains, you should have 100 loops on your hook by the end of your forward pass. So I've come to the end of my row. And one thing that you notice is if you turn it over, it looks like regular stitches. And that's why we're working in the back bump only. So that's the end of our forward pass. Next, we need to do our return pass. And to do our return pass, every single time we start our return pass, we need to yarn over and pull through just one loop on our hook. So the first stitch of every return pass only pulls through one loop. That's essentially like a chain. And so for the next stitches, we're going to yarn over and pull through 2 loops for the rest of the row. So we yarn over and pull through 2 loops, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and do that for the rest of the loops on your hook. All right, so I've come to the end of my row. And as you can see, I only have my 1 loop left on the hook. That's the end of the row. Now this next portion is going to be repeated until you have the number of rows you want in your entire blanket. So for example, if you're doing a baby blanket and you have 100 chains and you want to make it 100 rows tall, you'll repeat this same step 100 times until you have 100 rows, or actually it would be 99 times because this foundation row is our first row. All right, so what we need to do is find our first stitch. Now this first one right here, we won't work into because this first loop on the hook already counts as that. So find the second stitch from the hook. And as you can see, each stitch has a front loop and a back loop. For the Tunisian simple stitch, we need to work in the front loop only. So put your hook through the front loop only. So we put our hook through the front loop, and as you can see, it's still free. Next, we need to yarn over and pull through that front loop, just like that. Then we go into the next front loop, yarn over and pull through that loop, into the next front loop, yarn over and pull through. And you need to repeat this for every front loop in your foundation row. Okay, so I've come to the end of all my front loops, and the last thing I have is this little space right here. So we have our kind of chain from our last forward pass, and it creates this little space. We're just going to stick our hook through the center of that space and pull through, just like that. And just like in our first foundation row, the first stitch of this new row is going to pull through only 1 loop. So we yarn over and pull through just 1 loop, just like that. Then for every subsequent stitch, we pull through 2 loops until we're all the way at the end of our row. So you yarn over and pull through 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2 loops, yarn over and pull through 2, through 2, and just do that until you reach the end of your row. All right, and I'm at the last stitch for my row, so I'm going to pull through the 2 loops. And that's it, I've finished my row. Now you need to repeat this exact same step for however many rows you want until your baby blanket is done. So there's really no set number of rows, it's really just until you're satisfied with the length. So just repeat this as many times as you want until you have the full length of the blanket that you want. Okay, so I've come to the end of mine. I made mine 20 rows long because I had 20 foundation chains. So as you can see, it is not perfectly square. So the number of chains you have to begin with, if you do the same number of rows, you're gonna get something that's slightly rectangular. No. And for those of you who are noticing that your work is curling, don't worry about that, that's perfectly normal, and I will show you how to fix that as soon as we are done with the border. Yeah, so you didn't do anything wrong, nothing like that. You did everything right and it curled. That's okay, I'm gonna show you how to fix it later. All right, so now let's do the border. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna pull through my remaining yarn tail, and I'm actually gonna cut it a little bit short. And then to do the border, we're actually gonna do the border in regular single crochets. So you need your border color or whatever color you're gonna use for that. And I'm just gonna make a slip knot and stick that on my hook. And we can use the same Tunisian hook because it will work as a regular crochet hook. So we're going to find our last stitch just like this and put our hook through that has our border color yarn on it. We are going to yarn over, and pull through, single crochet one. So we're just going to single crochet one in every stitch across. And the way that we're going to do this is we're going to go through these gaps. So as you can see, there's a gap. So in the next gap, we single crochet again for two. And then in the next gap, and then in the next gap, and do this in every gap for the entire row. Just go straight across till you reach your last gap. All right, so I'm at my last stitch and we're gonna pull this last one out just like we always do. And we're gonna single crochet one. And then we're going to chain two and then go back into that same stitch and single crochet another one. And that's gonna help us turn the corner. And now we're gonna do that same thing except we're gonna single crochet in the gap between every row. So find the next gap like this, single crochet into every gap for the side. All right, so I've come to the last gap in my row and we're gonna do the same thing we did for the last corner where we single crochet one, then chain two, and then go back into that same gap and single crochet a second one to help us turn. And now we're at our foundation row. And we have the chains where we initially started to crochet. So now what we're gonna do is we're going to go through every chain. So just go through each chain. And single crochet one in each chain. All right, so now I've come to the end of my row and I'm just gonna do what I did last time where I single crochet one, then chain two, and then go back in and single crochet another one in the same stitch to help me turn the corner. And now we're gonna do our last side And just like with the other side, we're going to single crochet 1 in every one of these gaps. All right, so here I am at my last gap, so I'm going to single crochet 1. Then I'm going to chain 2, and then instead of single crocheting 1 in the same stitch, I'm just going to go into my first single crochet that we made and single crochet to turn the corner. Now we're going to do that one more time, and we're just going to single crochet 1 in every stitch across until we get to our 2 chains. Alright, so I've come to my 2 chains, and now what I need to do is kind of pull my chains out, and I'm going to single crochet 1, chain 2, and then go back into those 2 chains and single crochet another 1. And that's going to help me turn the corner. And that's pretty much what you need to do for every side. So you just single crochet 1 in every stitch, then when you get to the corner, you single crochet 1 into the chains, chain 2, and then single crochet again into those chains and move on. So do that for the remaining 3 sides, and I will meet you back here when that is all done. Okay, so I've come to my last stitch, and for those of you that would like a thicker border, you can pretty much just repeat this exact same process and continue around just like we did before, and single crocheting 2 when you get to the corners, and you can have as many rows as you want for this border, but for me, I'm going to stop here. So I've arrived at my 2 stitches, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to single crochet 1 and then chain 1 and then slip stitch into this next single crochet to finish off. Just like that. And then you can cut your yarn tail, and you can use a tapestry needle to weave this yarn tail in so that you don't see it, but I'm just gonna leave it as is for now. Now to deal with the curl. What you need to do is wet your blanket wherever it curls. You can use a spray bottle, or a good thing to do since you're making a blanket would be to put it in the wash and actually wash the blanket, but then don't put it in the dryer, just leave it out so that it's damp, and then once it's damp, I'll show you what to do next. All right, so I've wet my project, and actually I'm gonna remove this blue thing because that's actually just a piece of paper and I don't wanna get it wet. Now, what we need to do is take our damp blanket, and then you're gonna need something to weigh it down. So in my case, I actually have these tiny little cans of ginger ale, and I'm just gonna put them on the corners. It doesn't need to go all the way across, just on the corners is fine. But make sure that the corners are laying flat, and everything else should flatten out too. And pretty much you just leave this as is until it dries, and then once it's dry, your curl should be gone. So this is the finished product. If you like this tutorial, please don't forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe. If you want to see what else I'm up to, you can visit studiocrafty.com to see my other tutorials and tips and tricks and patterns and all sorts of cool things that I have there. And I will see you in the next video.